Hello everyone, welcome. It is Juliet here and I'm very excited even though it is 100 degrees outside where I am here in Southern California today. We are going to learn how to make this adorable little snowflake inspired earring. Let me just show you the back. It's the back, so it's kind of almost a Nordic style to it on the back. So I love how this came out. I'm really excited about this earring. And I made this earring using supplies that came in the recent Eureka Crystal Beads Pearlessence Beads Collection. However, it doesn't take a lot of materials and they're all really easy to come by. So first up here we have a 12mm crystal Rivoli, and this is just the color crystal. This is a Krakovski crystal. You could also use Swarovski or whatever, but just make sure that it's 12mm, okay? Then here, these beads are 80 Demi Rounds. So these are Toho beads, and they are basically as big around this way as a normal 80, but they are half the size. So it would take two of those together to form the size of 180, okay? So these did come in our collection. This is a beautiful color. This is inside color crystal snow lined, okay? Now, Eureka have these Demi Rounds, 80s, in a whole rainbow of colors, and I think this would, if you're not really into the whole snowflake thing yet and you're still wanting to do maybe flowers or something, you could get a different color, okay? Not necessarily make a snowflake. You could make a really cool like flower thing if you used colors and maybe a color in the center, and you know, whatever your 15-0s, a different color for that, and whatever your Delicas are, a different color, like maybe green or something. You could make a really pretty flower as well. So this does not just come in one color is what I'm saying. Think outside the box. I'm thinking maybe a wreath for Christmas with different greens would be cute, and then you could do these 15-0s here as little berries. So you know, I'll show you how to do this, but like, don't just make snowflakes is what I'm saying. Okay, and then here we have some Miyuki 15-0s. So these again came in our collection. These are 15591, okay? So 15-0s. And then finally I have some Miyuki Delicas DB307. So these are a matte gray color, really pretty color. I like this color a lot. And then these earrings also did come in our collection, but you know, you'll need some kind of, if you're making it into an earring, some kind of finding. So these are very nice little findings here. And then from my stash I did add a wire guard just to help with attaching it. I didn't want to, technically you could put a jump ring through that top Demi Round, but I don't like the entire earrings structure depending on one bead, because if that bead gets broken then you're kind of stuffed, okay? So I decided to attach the wire guard kind of behind that little embellishment, okay? So I didn't want to use this bead because they are a little bit thinner obviously than a normal 80, and it could get broken, okay? So I'm using a wire guard. If you don't have a wire guard, you could just make a little loop of 15-0 beads there, okay? So there are different ways to do it, all right? Then I'm using a size 10 beading needle, and I have about 4 feet of thread, which is about a meter, 1.2 meters, I think. And I'm using this KO thread in this gray color because my beads are kind of gray and these are white, so I'm kind of splitting the difference here and going in between. Okay, so to begin, we're going to bezel our Rivoli, and this is pretty standard bezel here. So you're going to pick up 32 of your Delica beads, 11 Delicas, and I like to pick mine up in kind of groups of 10 usually. Okay, and once you've got that on, push it down almost to the end of your thread. Leave about 4 inches that you can weave in at the end. So you want it to be about 2 times the length of your needle. And before you continue, because this is extremely important for peyote stitch, I want you to double count your beads. Okay. Okay, so I've got 32 on my needle, and I'm holding my short end, and I'm going into that bead nearest the short end back towards all the other beads here. And I'm gonna hold that bead and pull it until it forms into a ring. So here you can adjust your tail if you need it to be a little bit longer or shorter. You can do that now, okay? So most of you may already know how to do this, but for those who don't, I will quickly run through a tutorial. Okay, so to do this peyote stitch, you're going to pick up one more bead and look at the bead where I'm coming out. So I'm coming out going in this direction. Okay, that's my tail at the bottom there, and I'm just holding that in my hand. I'm going to skip this next bead, and then I'm going to go into the bead after the bead where I'm coming out. And these 2 beads that are going to sit right next to each other. So this is the bead that I just added, and it's sitting right next to that bead, and that's the one I skipped, and then there I am, okay? And I like to just hold my fingers and thumb on top of the ring and kind of hold the ring like this and work around the side is the way I find it the easiest if you're brand new to this, okay? So then you're gonna pick up another Delica, you're going to skip the next bead, which is this one right here, and then I'm going to go into the next bead, okay? And again, when I pull, that bead is going to sit beside the bead that I skipped. All right, and you're going to do this 16 times because we're only sewing into every other bead, and remember we started with 32, so we're going to add half as many, so that would be 16. And like I said, if you just hold it like this, it'll keep it nice and flat so that you know what's the inside and what's the outside, and you can just kind of adjust as you go around if you need to. If it starts to slip away, just grab your tail and push all the beads towards your working thread, or pull the beads downwards, okay? But don't tie any knots at this point because you do need a little bit of wiggle room for this stitch. The thread may need to stretch out a little bit because every time we add a bead, it kind of pulls the next bead up, and so we need that little bit of wiggle room there, okay? All right, so I'll go ahead and finish doing this, and when I get back to where I'm about to finish, I'll come back. Okay, so I have one more bead to add here. So you're going to pick up your last bead, which is your 16th bead. You're going to again skip the next bead, and then you're going to sew into the bead where your tail is coming out from. That's your starting tail there. And you're going to sew through that bead plus the first outside bead, and that's called stepping up. Okay, so we're going to step up, and if you pull your tail and your working thread, it should form into a very nice ring like this. Okay, so now what you're going to want to do is we're going to start to turn these 2 sides so that they are kind of even. Instead of being one on the outside, one on the inside, you're going to kind of start to form one on the top. And the way we're going to do that is you're going to pick up one of your 15 O's, and you're going to So I'm coming out this outer bead of this pair right here. I'm gonna sew into the next bead on the outside there, okay? With a 15-0, I'm gonna pull quite tight and I'm gonna pull upwards, okay? I'm gonna pick up another, and I'm gonna do the same thing. And I'm gonna pull upwards, pulling in quite tight, okay? So you're gonna go all the way around doing this. So notice that I am holding my thumb still on the ring because I wanna know still what's the outside here. But then I'm kind of sewing into the outside beads and pulling upwards, and that way it then becomes a top bead, okay? So you're gonna go all the way around, adding 16 of these 15-0s, okay? So I have one left to do. This was still on the outside. You can see that one is pulled into the inside. So I know that that is now the bead that I have to sew into. It's the one that my starting bead is coming out of, okay? So you're gonna have to go through that bead and then step up again into that 15-0, okay? And when you pull this, you're gonna pull quite tight, okay? And we're gonna start pulling that entire ring inside to the middle here, okay? So I really give it a good old tug. So these beads, these 15-0s are smaller than these 11-0s, so they're gonna start to pull to the inside, okay? And when it starts to look like the mouth of a shark, you know you've done it correctly, okay? All right, so here we are exiting from a 15-0. We're going to pick up another 15-0 and we're going to sew into the next 15-0. There we go, okay. So once you've done that, it should sit on top of this bead down below. We're going to pick up another one, and again you're going to go straight into the next 15-0 and give it a pull, and it'll also help when you're pulling this, it'll pull in a little bit more, okay? So because we're adding another smaller bead, so what we're doing is we're forming the front here of our earring. This front area right here is what we're working on, okay? All right, so once again, we will be adding 16. I've added 3, so I will add the rest and I'll come back when I approach the end. Okay, I'm approaching my last gap here for my last 15-0, and I'm gonna go into that 15-0 that's right opposite, and then I'm gonna step up again into the innermost bead. So I'm going to go through the one that I should go into plus the next one up above, okay? So we've stepped up again here, okay? And again, I'm gonna tug on both ends and kind of try and just massage that a little and try and get it a little bit more evenly distributed. Okay, so we now have this. So we're going to do one more round here, which is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to pick up another 15-0, and just like before, I'm going to sew into the next innermost bead. So that's an outer bead. These are the ones that are inner, okay? So I'm going to sew into that innermost bead, but I'm also going to sew down into the bead down below it like this, okay? So I'm sewing through 2. So I'm skipping the lower bead, and then I'm going through the upper bead and then the next lower bead, okay? So we now have a bead that sits above the other bead right here. Then I'm going to go up again to the outer bead. So just go through the very next outer bead, okay? And once again, I'm going to pick up one bead. I'm going to go into the next outer bead plus the inner bead. Okay, and then again I have to go back up to the outer bead again. So just go through the next bead. Okay, and see how this is starting to create a kind of little decorative wavy edge. That's what you want. Okay, so we're basically going in every other gap. So I'm going to put a bead here in this gap, but I'm not going to put one in the next gap, so I basically have to move forward, skipping that next gap by just sewing into the bead below and then the next bead. Okay, so we're basically skipping that gap. So because 32 is such a nice even number, we had 16 beads, but we're only sewing in every other bead here, so we're going to have 8 points, which is half of 16. Okay, so I'm going to continue around and I'll come back when I'm approaching the end. Okay, I'm approaching my last gap that I need to fill here, so I'm going into that bead, and I now have my 8 inner points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I am now going to make my way down to the outside edge. So I'm going to follow, I'm going to go into the next lower 15 right here. So I was coming out that bead there, I went into the lower bead, then I'm going to go through these 3 beads. So it's just a straight shot to the outside edge. Okay, and give it all a nice pull, and this will sit on the front of our Rivoli like this, which will look really pretty. It looks like a little starburst. Okay, all right, so we're now going to work on the back side of filling in the back so that our back is protected. I did this so that you can't knock the point of the Rivoli and scrape off that. You know, I like to cover the backs of my pieces. I just feel like it's nicer, and also, you know, it's more decorative. Like, that looks really nice. So you want, especially if you sell your jewelry, you want people to think it's, you know, had some work on it, wasn't just slapped together. Okay, so coming out from one of the outside edge pieces, you're just going to pick up 115 and go into the next bead, and you're going to do that all the way around, obviously adding a total of 16 beads. Okay, so this is easy. You can just pop them in. You can start to pull inwards here, but you don't need to pull super tight. We do still have to put our stone in, and once I get about 2/3 of the way around, I guess, is a good time, or maybe half. You could actually do it now if you want to. Put your stone in upside down like this. Okay, just put it in there, hold it in place with your thumb, and you can just bead around it, and it kind of makes it a little bit easier. So you're just going straight into the next sticking out outside bead, and you can start to pull in around your stone here. Okay, so I will continue around and I'll come back when I get over here. Okay, I'm approaching my last gap here, and I'm just going to sew into the bead right here and then step up into the 15-0 as well. So I'm going through the Delicas and then the 15-0. And I'm going to pull that, and it should start to hold in. It's not great, but it's kind of should hold in there. Okay, sorry, my back is so scratched up. I actually made another pair of earrings first, and then I didn't like it. It was something totally different, and I had to cut it apart, and I had to get in there with my my scissors, and I kind of scratched up my back a little bit. So if you see a little bit of scratching, that's what that is. Yours will, I promise you, when they arrive from Eureka, they are not scratched. That was all me, okay? Okay, so I'm coming out here and I'm just gonna check on the front, and what I want is I want it to be coming out from one of the beads where this triangle starts. You should be coming out one of those, okay? So this is actually going to be the top right here where this little extra bead is. So see how we have like a line like this? That's what you want to be coming out, one of those beads that matches with that, okay? And if you've done it all correctly the way I showed you, that you should automatically be coming out right there, okay? We're going to pick up 3 of our Delicas beads, okay? And we're going to skip the next 15-0 and we're going to sew into the next 15-0 like this. Okay, and it's going to form kind of a little cup over that in between 15-0, which if you remember I said that's the top. So there's the top, so we have this kind of cup shape right here, okay? Then you're going to pick up 3 more Delicas. Again, we're going to skip the next 15-0, so that's the one I'm coming out from. I'm going to skip this one and I'm going to go into the next one, okay? So you're going to do this a total of 8 times so that you have 8 loops, okay? I'm adding my last group of 3. I'm skipping the 15 and I'm going into the next 15, and then I'm also going to sew up through the first 2 beads in that very first group of 3 that we added. So I'm going up the 15 plus the first 2 of that bridge of 3. Okay, and these may kind of be popping up a little bit, you know, they might not want to sit flat yet, so don't worry if that's the case on yours, okay? Now we're going to pick up 3 of our little 15-0s, okay? And coming out from that middle Delica, I'm going to look to the next group here, the one that's right above that 15-0, that second Delica. I'm going to sew into that Delica, okay? So now I have this little line of 3. And I'm all the while, as I go here, I'm kind of pulling inwards. Okay, so again, pick up 3. On this next bridge of 3, look for the one above that 15-0, which is the second or the middle Delica. So into that one, and then you can kind of pull it inwards. And again, this may be kind of sitting up off the Rivoli. That's quite okay. Don't worry about that, okay? So once again, we're going to add 8 groups of 3. So I'll come back once I've done that. Okay, I'm adding my last group of 3 here. So I have to sew into that middle Delica, and then I'm going to sew up the first 2 of the first group of 3 beads that we added. And again, you'll notice that they look kind of uneven and they're maybe popping up from the back here. That's okay. We're gonna fix that right now, okay? All right, we're gonna pick up 1 Delica. So I'm coming out from that second bead on the group of 3, and I'm gonna go straight over into that second or middle bead on the next group of 3. It can be a little bit tricky to get into these. And as I do that, I'm going to pull inwards quite a lot, and see how that's pulling it down flat. That's what you want to happen, okay? So again, you're going to pick up 1 Delica, you're going to go into the middle 15-0 of the next group of 3, and you're going to pull inwards like this. You see how that's making a nice little design for us there? Again, I'm going into a middle bead, make sure you've picked up your Delica, and pull, okay? and it's going to start to make a shape, pretty shape like that. Okay, so we're going to add 8 Delicas. Okay, and as you're adding your 8th Delica, you're going to sew into that middle 15-0 of the group where the first Delica is coming out of, and you can step up into the Delica as well. So I'm going through this 15-0 plus the first Delica that we added, okay? And give that all a good pull, and you may need to kind of massage a little bit. All right, now we're going to only sew around these Delicas, and we're going to pull them all in towards the middle as much as we can. They're not going to close up entirely, as I showed you on the back here, that you will be able to see this little point, and they will kind of sit up a tiny bit from the back, but it's not much, okay? So go ahead and go through all of those inner Delicas as many times. I would go around at least twice and just reinforce, okay? So okay, so we now have to make our way over to the edge. So exiting from a Delica here, we're going to go through the next 2 15-0s on this bit right here, okay? Then you're going to go through the next 2 Delicas here, which will be leading up to a 15-0. Oops, poking myself. Hazard. Okay, so you're going through, that's like our little group of 3 right there. We're going through 2 plus that 15-0. Okay. Okay, so we now want to look at the front of our piece, and do you see the extra where we have 2 right here? What we want to do is to get not there. We want to come out right before this one where there isn't that. So where the dip here is, see how there's this dip in right here? We want to come out this bead right here, right in front of this dip. So we're going to move forward, so you can just move diagonally through the beads until we come out from right there where that, right before that dip. So see how this is going like this, okay? Oh, that's our extra bead. I want to come out right there. We're going to pick up one of our Demi Rounds and one of our 15-0s, and we're going to push it down. We're going to pass back down through our Demi Round, and then we're going to go into the Delica right after that bead where our little dip is. So here's our dip. We're coming out this bead. We're going to go into the one right after it, right here, okay? And you're going to pull, and you may need to pull on your 15-0 and then kind of get it to sit evenly right there. But you basically want a little point right where that dip, so that kind of dips in, and then here's a decoration, okay? Now we're going to move forward through the next 2 Delicas here. So I'm coming out right, you can move this if you need to. Coming out this one right here. I'm going to move forward through the next 2 Delicas. Okay, and here I am at my next dip. There's my dip right there, okay? So I'm again going to pick up a Demi Round and a 15-0. I'm going to push that down. I'm going to go back through the Demi Round and I'm going to go into the Delica after that 15-0 at the dip right there. So there's the, so I'm going into the one after it, okay? And you're going to pull. And if you need to, you can adjust, okay? Then again, I'm going to go through the next two Delicas on the edge here. And here I am ready to do the same. So we're going to add 8 of these little points going around the front here. Just keep your tail off to the back while you're doing this. Don't let it get tangled up, okay? Okay, I'm adding my last one on and I'm going through that Delica right after that point and pull. Okay, so it should now look like this. Okay, so you should currently be coming out from one Delica where you finished adding that last bead, and you're going to move forward into the next Delica, which should be the middle one above these two beads right here. So I'm coming out from that Delica. If you want to, you can move forward to the next one so that your tension's a little better. That's actually what I did. I moved forward, okay? So you're not right next to the last embellishment that you added. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pick up 3 of our Demi Rounds, okay? And we're going to sew through the same bead again, like this. And these may sit flat like this. They're kind of all over the place right now. There's no control to them, okay? Don't worry about that. We will fix that on our next round, okay? You're going to sew through the next 2 Delicas. So I'm sewing, I'm just going to loosen that so you can see. So I'm going to sew through this one, the one right behind my embellishment, and then the one after that, and then this one. So I'm going through these 2 and then these 2 to get over to this middle one. Okay, so you're going to go through 2, and then you're going to go through 2 more. Okay, so I'm coming out now from the Delica that's right above those 2 right there, okay? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick up my 3 Demi Rounds. I'm going to go through the same bead again. And then I'm going to go through the next 2 beads. So the one kind of between these 2 on the back, and then the next one up. Like that. And then I'm going to go through 2 more. Like that. Okay. You're going to do the same thing 8 times. And you can see here, these are all over the place, okay? We will fix that, don't worry. Just again, keep that tail thread on the back. Okay, I'm adding my last group of 3 on. I'm going through the same bead again, and as you can see, this is a total mess, so we need to tell these beads what we want them to do, okay? So from the bead that I'm coming out of right now, I'm going to move forward 2 beads so that I'm coming out from the one that's behind this. So it's a little bit easier if you actually look on the back for this, okay? So I'm coming out right here, and I'm going to go through these next 2 beads. And for this round, I do like to just work on the back. I feel like it's a little bit simpler. Okay, so coming out from the bead behind this thing here, okay, and I'm working on the back, I'm going to pick up 1 Delica. I'm going to go through the next 2 Demi Rounds and the 3rd one. And then I'm going to pick up 1 more Delica, okay? and I'm going to go into the bead that is behind the next one here. So if this is where the bead where this is centered, I'm going into the bead behind the next 15-0 over, okay? And it can be a little bit tricky to get into that bead. Just take your time doing this. Generally, like I said, it's easier if you do it on the back. You can push that little thing forward if you need to, that little bobble that we put on the front, okay? And pull, okay? So now this is pushing these together. If I turn over to the front, see how they're being pushed together better, okay? So you're gonna pick up another bead, go through your 3 demi rounds, another Delica, and then you're going into that bead above the next white bead on the back here, next 15-0, going into that Delica, okay? And pull. And so this will start to then have some structure, as you can see here, okay? And then you just pick up the next Delica, go through your 3 beads. Careful not to get looped around. And then your next bead, and find the bead that's behind. So if that's the one that's centered over here, where's the one behind this? It's right here. This one right here, okay? So if you use these 15-0s as your guide, you should be able to make it all the way around doing that, and it will start to look a lot tidier. We're going to do one more round after this to reinforce this edge, and then I'll show you how to add your wire guard. But let me finish this round first, and then I'll come back. Okay, I'm adding my last Delica on, and I'm going into the bead right below the next 15 right here. Okay, so when you're working this, just be really careful, especially if you're holding it on the back, that your thread isn't getting looped around any of this or any of this on the front without you knowing, okay? That's the only dangerous thing about having all this stuff is it's easy to get looped and kind of not even realize, okay? All right, so here we are coming out from that bead where we just added our last Delica. What I like to do is I do one more round, and I only go up the first demi round and the last demi round and Delica, okay? Like this, and then you want this thread to go either in front or behind and pull it down. It just helps to really form this a little better. Right now I would say this is a little soft. See right here, it's a little bit soft, and we want it to be a little bit more sharp. Like this one is a little bit sharper. So just by going around again and skipping that middle demi round, you're going to really help just tidy it up a little bit on the front, okay? And again, you'll have to go through that Delica that's behind that 15-0 again, but it should be all right now, okay? So again, I'm only going up the Delica and the first demi round. I'm skipping the second demi round. I'm going through the third, and then back down the Delica, and then into the Delica on the base, which I usually can't get through it. So what I do is I do 3 moves. I go up, I go down, and then I go through that one, and then I go up, I go down, and go through, just because you don't want to break your bead or your needle or anything else. So just take your time doing this reinforcing step. Okay, we're almost done. We just have to put on our wire guard. So I'll come back when I've finished doing this step. Okay, so I just finished reinforcing this one right here, and I'm coming out from this lower down bead in between the two of them here, okay? So this bead right here is the one that I'm coming out from. I'm going to move forward through the next bead. And so you should be right before the bead that's directly behind this, okay? So I'm coming out right before that bead right there. I'm going to pick up my wire guard, and I'm going to enter into one side of it from the bottom here like this, okay? And then you're also going to, you can let it drop down to your piece, and then you're going to go down the other side of it, okay? And you're basically going to skip these two beads where the 15-0 and the one above it, okay? You're going to go into the bead right after the 15-0, like this, okay? And so it's like that, okay? And when you pull, make sure that your thread is sitting in the channel of the wire guard, okay? So it's now sitting like this, okay? Again, I'm on the back here. If you look right below the bead I'm coming out, all right, so this would be my next bead. I'm coming out this bead, this little group of 3 right here. I'm just gonna turn. So I'm kind of working this way at the moment. I'm just gonna turn, and I'm gonna go back the other way through those 3 beads right there. And my thread will just slip in to the gap and disappear. So you don't need to worry about your thread showing up, okay? Okay, just moving through that 3rd bead there, okay? All right, so I went through all 3 of those beads, and then looking back up above right here, I'm going to go through this bead, and I'm going to go through the bead that's basically underneath my wire guard. So I have to go kind of diagonally to the front through 2 beads. Okay, so I'm going through this bead right here and that bead there, and you can see my needles coming out through that bead, okay? Okay, then I'm going to go up this side of my wire guard where my thread is coming out. I'm going to go back down the other side of my wire guard. Again, I'm making sure that I'm sitting in that little channel, okay? And then I'm going to go through that bead that's right underneath my wire guard and diagonally out the next bead as well. So that bead there, that Delica, and then that bead there, okay? Okay. If you want to go over one more time your wire guard, you can. You may need to switch down to a 11 or a 12 needle to get through it, okay? Just be warned about that. All right, so now you're ready to tie off your thread. What I usually do is I come over, I thread my needle, and I come through these 3, this group of 3 right here. I come out right here, and then with this thread I sew over, I tie a knot, and then I sew in my ends. So that's how I finish it off, and then you're ready to attach on your finding. So I'll finish that off, and then I'll come back. Okay, I finished my earring. This is the one I just did, And I just love these. I think they're so pretty, and I actually really want to try making them in other colors. I'm gonna have to order some more 8.0 Demi Rounds in other colors. I haven't looked. I know I have a couple, but yeah, I need to look and see what I have. But I just love these, and I love the kind of dimensionality of them, and I also love the fact that the back is so pretty. That makes me happy. And they're not huge or anything. They're, you know, really good size. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I would love to see if you make these in other colors, or in these colors, in fact. Do make sure, if you're on Facebook, I'd love to see you in my Facebook group called Jewels and Roses Beading Buds. Make sure if you do ask for membership that you do answer the questions. That just helps us to know that, you know, you are not a scammer and you're a real person. So that's kind of what they're there, just to make sure that everybody isn't just clicking join, join, join. You know, you actually do want to join, so you've taken a moment to answer the questions. Okay guys, see you very soon for another video. I'm probably going to make one more project using this collection, maybe two. I love this collection. It's absolutely gorgeous. Do go and check out Eureka Crystal Beads if you need any of the Demi Rounds or anything else. And I will see you very soon. Take care. Happy beading. Bye.